Hello, my name is Edgardo Ocasio. I'm a Cisco Security Systems Engineer here at Tech Data. In this video, we'll be demonstrating our Cisco AMP product. So AMP is one of my favorite products to discuss in general, simply because it is one of our most ubiquitous products and our most powerful products at that. I'm starting the presentation with this slide, the AMP Everywhere architecture, simply to display that AMP is everywhere in our security portfolio. And what I mean by that is anytime any malware or file analysis is being performed on our environment, it is leveraging AMP. So if it's in a web or email security appliance and it does a file analysis on an email or a web request that came in, it's going to leverage AMP. Our firepower services are going to leverage AMP. So anytime any file analysis, as we see in our umbrella demo that you can also see, it's also leveraging AMP. Okay. So how does it work? Well, there's two clouds that it uses. Let's say it gets to your environment. It doesn't have to be a Meraki MX. This is just part of the diagram. It's actually going to check it with the AMP cloud lookup first. So it's going to look for the signature in the AMP cloud. If it doesn't find it, then it would send a file up to ThreatGrid for a file analysis. And that's our dynamic sandbox that we have on our environment. Now, just so you know, AMP is a cloud security solution. Therefore, it resides in the cloud. However, you can purchase a physical appliance, although that is not the most common method. The AMP physical appliance is mostly for environments that cannot have their information in the cloud. Moving right along, this is the AMP for Endpoints dashboard. Now, please note that we are discussing AMP for Endpoints. So there is a difference between AMP for networks and AMP for endpoints. AMP for networks is leveraged on our firepower appliances or firewalls, whereas AMP for endpoints is standalone and is working on the client level. So therefore, if there's no decryption needs to happen, because decryption happens at the endpoint, and we're sitting at the endpoint. What we like about AMP is that it doesn't have a siloed approach in regards to security and the way it handles its intelligence. I've already stated that it's ubiquitous, but you can quickly detect, contain, and remediate malware. And it's very integratable with all our other products, as well as disparate brands. Now, in order to utilize this product, I'm going to attack it from an analyst perspective. So I'm pretending that I'm an analyst, and I have to see what's going on in my environment. So there's 4 questions that I intend on answering as an analyst, that I would ask myself as an analyst. And they are: A, what happens to the endpoint? Or 1, what happens to the endpoint? 2, where else is this malware? 3, what is this malware doing? And last but not least, how can we stop it? Right? Those are reasonable questions to ask yourself. So I'm going to take you through those. First and foremost, we see our dashboard here. We see our indications of compromise. We see the quarantine detections. We see cognitive threat analytics here. You may not know what a lot of this is as of right now. Those in the security industry know the significant compromise artifacts, compromise event types. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this end group right here, which is the main big group, and I'm going to click and go into the inbox to see what's going on in this environment or within this group of users. So once I click on the inbox, it's going to showcase the users in that inbox down here. And the first thing I realize is that there's 139 incidents on this one particular end station. So maybe I want to start there, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is expand on that particular host, and then I'm going to begin work. That's going to put it into an in progress status. You see, it went from require attention to in progress. So I'm working on this end station right now. It's going to put all the information that's relevant to this information and have it more readily available for me, so it's quicker. But now when I click on this and I expand on it, the first thing I want to do, which is what I asked, is I want to know what happens to my endpoint, or what happened to my endpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot off of the endpoint. So that's what the device trajectory means. Here we see the information load and populate. Now this is the device in a timeline, everything that has gone on in the environment, whether shadow copies were deleted, whether a process call or some kind of process call happened, whether something was executed, a HTTP GET request was sent out. No matter what, a file was executed, some CLI commands. It's going to show you all here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually scrolling to the beginning of it because I want to know what happens to my endpoint. And I know that this yellow means that it was compromised. So I want to know when it started. So if I scroll to the very beginning of it, I can quickly see that this is where it began, between 5 p.m. and 5:01 p.m., somewhere in those seconds. Here we realize that if we click on the top left, it tells you what happened. So Cognitive Threat Analytics detected a malwaresality. That's what this means. What is a malwaresality? A malwaresality is any type of persistent threat per se, which is it's two files that foster a parent-child relationship amongst each other. And what they'll do is they can both send out attacks so that they're obfuscating where the attack is coming from. And they can also recreate themselves in the event where you deleted file 1 and file 2 was still existent. It can recreate another file to replace file 1. So it's more of a persistent threat, and that's what malwaresality is. So now we just answered our first question. What happened to my endpoint? I just realized that it was hit with a malwaresality. Next thing I want to know is what triggered it. If I look at this file, the file that ran right before my indication of compromise, will typically tell you that, hey, this is the file that's malicious or the file that's executing this. So here we see the file. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it. And I'm going to right click or click on here. And now I'm going to pivot off of the file, right? Because now what my next question is where else is this file? So we took it from the dashboard and we went over to the device trajectory to show everything that's going on in the endpoint, and we answered our first question. What happened to our endpoint? However, our second question is where else is this malware? For the demonstration purposes, this is only on this one end station. If this was on other end stations here, you would see it in the timeline sense and where the propagation took place and what time. Okay? So in this case, this is the only patient 0 that we have. In this case, we've answered 2 questions. What happens to the endpoint? Where else is this malware? We know it's a malwaresality, and we know it's only on this one end station. So now we want to know what is it doing. So since we want to know what is it doing, what we're going to do is we're going to see the SHA-256 here, or the signature, and we're going to click on it. And we're going to go over into file analysis. And the file analysis now is going to showcase the file itself, tell you how malicious it is. It has a 95% score of being malicious. Tells you the behavior indicators on why it was flagged malicious. But if I want to know more information, because that's not enough, I click on report. Report is going to print out the threat grid report. Threat grid is just a sandbox that AMP leverages in order to gain dynamic analysis information about a particular file. Okay? A particular unknown file. So here you're able to see you can download the sample really quickly. I'd advise heavy caution for that because this isn't a legitimate sample. You could execute something on your computer by accident. Analysis video. Analysis video is pretty cool. I'll showcase that in a minute when I show a ransomware attack and how it happens on an end station. Then you can actually download the packet capture, which if you want to use that and leverage that in Wireshark and start doing some reverse engineering, start figuring out what it's doing, you can do that. So for example, you can download the video from here, the analysis video, and this is basically what it would look like. This is a ransomware or WannaCry attack. I'm sure several of you may be familiar with a ransomware attack. And no, the mouse doesn't always jump around as much. This is just the demo that I have, the video that I just picked. So here you see your files are encrypted. That's your desktop background that's changed, which is typically indicative of a ransomware attack. And then you see your pop-up telling you that your files have been encrypted, where to send the money to, how about Bitcoins, how to buy Bitcoins to make sure you can pay them. So yeah, this is a video, so you're able to see what this would actually do in your environment as well, which is pretty interesting. So now we've already essentially answered 3 questions. Is hey, what happened to the endpoint malwaresality? Where else is this malware? Well, nowhere else. What is it doing? Well, I'm hoping that by the time you've done your analysis video, your PCAP, and you're looking at this, you're able to tell the behavior indicators. You're able to tell what is it doing, right? But last but not least, you want to know how to stop it, right? It's very simple. Right click, application blocking, and put it on your block list. You put it on any block list or even simple detection list. You put it on your quarantine list. Any one of these, basically, if you put it on your block, you create a block list and you put on your simple detection, now it's going to block it for those particular users or for everyone in particular, or however you, depending on how you configure the policy on the back end. But it's really that simple. Now, there are several other things that I want to talk about now that we've already talked about the analysis portion of it and how it looks and on a day-to-day basis. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a little bit more about the program, but from this perspective, some of the features. For example, here we have vulnerable software, and we have prevalence, and agentless cognitive incidents. These are the three things that we're going to discuss right now. I like to talk about prevalence, particularly because as an attacker, I think this is where I would get caught. And you see, you could break it down by Windows, Mac, or Linux. So basically, prevalence just means, hey, I'm an attacker, and for example, I have a malware sality into your environment, meaning I have a persistent connection. So what's going to happen is, all I need to do is drip drop information out. So instead of me pulling information out, I don't know, gigs at a time, terabytes at a time, or sometimes even megs, big megs at a time. Well, instead I may just want to pull small megs, maybe some kilobytes, and drip drop the information out. Well, that's where you'll be caught by prevalence. Prevalence just means, hey, this looks suspicious. Not happening on a grand scale, but definitely something worth paying attention to, right? So this is where I would pay attention to after I would have handled all my indications of compromise. This is where I'd probably be in next. Okay, the vulnerable software I actually bring up because I have gotten a question such as, can this replace my vulnerability management software? The answer is no. This is not a vulnerability management product. It's a file analysis and malware reputation product. Now, we do overlap in this part right here, which is why I'm displaying it. The vulnerable software is just saying, hey, based on the applications that I have caught on your network, these applications have known vulnerabilities, and there's a CVE score, meaning how intense it is, with all the versions. And if you click on it, you can actually go right to the remediation, know what to download in order to patch it. And then you're able to patch all your software, right? Just like your other products out there, vulnerability management like Nessus, Tenable Nessus, or Nexpose, Rapid7's Nexpose, or Qualiscan, some of those that I've used in the field before. Well, the difference is simple. This overlap is evident. However, they have external agents which run Nmap type of scans, like full TCP scans, half open TCP scans, and things of that sort, in order to see what ports you may have open, or just to see how the ports respond to see if they can get in. They do some kind of pen testing. AMP does not do pen testing. It's just a product for malware analysis and, like I said, in file reputation, but it will tell you the applications in your network and whether or not they are vulnerable. So it does overlap in this part. Okay, so I had to clarify that. And then agentless cognitive analytics. The reason I brought this up is not because I'm going to do anything here. I just wanted to talk about the agentless portion of the cognitive threat analytics. Now, cognitive threat analytics, the way it works, it actually, if you have an agentless, a box that must remain agentless, for example, some kind of PCI server, and you can't install an agent on it, that's fine. We can use cognitive threat analytics, and the agentless portion of it, what it's going to do, it's going to actually inspect the web proxy logs, send it to the console, so that it can see what this machine's actually doing without having anything on it. So it's a passive way of analyzing the threats that are going on within that environment or within that end station. Okay, so now also one thing that this does is it actually stops data exfiltration, and it doesn't matter if they're actually using Tor networks or if they're encrypting via HTTPS or any type of other SSL technology, right, or protocol. Yeah, and now we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about deployment, which I'm sure it's a very very common question on how to get it. The first thing you're going to do is you have to create your groups. So say, hey, these are my groups. Why? Because you're going to specify that when you download the connector. So once I specify the groups, I'm going to go to download connector. Now I have my Windows, my Linux, my Mac, and my Androids, and I select the group that I have created, and once I select it, now it opens the options to either show URL, which is going to show me a URL. I can copy this URL, send it to the end user, and have them go there and install the package by themselves from this URL. Or you could download the file, put it somewhere in some kind of like software center. Perhaps you could put it there and push it out through GPO or some kind of SCCM if you're using Mac, or I mean like a mixed environment. You can use SCCM. So basically, there's ways to push these products out, or these installs out. But this is just some of the ways to do it. Okay. Now it also does AnyConnect. So what I mean by that is if you have AnyConnect, the latest version of AnyConnect, then what it does is it allows you to just enable that version of enable AMP from the AnyConnect, so that you'll get that protection without needing to install the client. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have additional questions, please contact your Cisco security team here at Tech Data.